The emotional economy of belief. When feeling replaces thinking. Some belief systems cannot survive analysis. They depend on emotional consensus, on people who agree to feel something rather than examine whether it is true. Manifesting, authentic transformation, and living your truth all rely on a collective suspension of reason. The illusion only holds if everyone in the room agrees to keep the lights dim. She built her life around that principle. Once she adopted the coaching and manifesting ideology, she needed an environment that would echo it back to her. It was not enough to believe it privately. She needed others who would affirm it, defend it, and translate any contradiction into a lesson from the universe. That is why she surrounded herself with like-minded friends and spiritually attuned colleagues. It was not friendship. It was maintenance. A shared script that could keep disbelief at bay. The two men who believed the story. Two men entered that constructed world at different times. Each provided what her ideology required. Validation without investigation. The somatic therapist, the man who should have known better. He arrived first. He was recently divorced and trained through the Somatic Psychotherapy Institute of Australia, steeped in the language of emotional awareness, embodiment, and personal growth. By background and experience, he should have recognized the signs of transference, projection, and emotional bypassing. But training does not guarantee wisdom, and self-awareness does not prevent self-deception. Divorce wounds the ego. It strips away control, predictability, and status. When she appeared, articulate and expressive, on a journey of transformation, she represented renewal. For someone who had spent years learning to interpret emotional energy, she was the perfect illusion, complexity disguised as depth. He should have been curious. He should have asked why her awakening required dismantling a marriage and inflicting harm. Instead, he suspended inquiry, convinced that he was dealing with someone emotionally evolved rather than emotionally evasive. When the cracks appeared, the chaos, the panic, the psychological fallout, the visible damage left behind, the story collapsed. He saw what it was costing others, and by extension, what it revealed about him. The narrative that once made him feel insightful now implicated him. So he walked away. He rationalized it as her acting in haste, maybe finally seeing the disaster that unfolded with first a severe panic attack he knew of as she called him to understand how to deal with it, then a suicide attempt not long after. Maybe finally seeing the lies that were always there, because that explanation protected him from the harder truth. He did not want to see what was always there. It is easier to blame a liar than admit you ignored the evidence. 2 years later, he actually denied any such affair. When confronted with the proof and facts she had shared of him, he disappeared. The retired detective, the man who would not look. The second man entered later. A retired detective, roughly 10 years older than her, a year older than the husband she left behind. He had lost his wife to suicide. That kind of loss rewires a person. It leaves guilt, helplessness, and the desperate need to prove that love can heal what it once destroyed. For him, she was a resurrection story. A woman who had walked away from her old life under the banner of transformation was proof that people can start again, that pain has meaning, that love can redeem. She gave him hope that renewal after tragedy was not only possible, but noble. Yet, for someone trained to follow evidence, he seemed remarkably uninterested in facts. A lifetime of reading inconsistencies, assessing motives, and separating truth from fabrication should have made him alert to contradiction. But in his personal life, he turned off the instinct that defined his career. He did not ask the obvious questions. He did not ask how her marriage really ended. He did not ask why there was so much collateral damage. He did not ask how a transformation supposedly rooted in truth required deceit to sustain it. If he saw the full picture, the manipulation, the emotional casualties, the timeline of betrayal, he would have to confront a devastating possibility, that he had been drawn into another story that ends in destruction. After losing a wife to suicide, he could not bear the idea that he had been duped again. Admitting so would have others see him differently in entertaining someone who had caused her own partner to want to take his life, not once but 3 times. So he remains in the dream. To this day, By all accounts, he still believes in the story. For a man who once investigated lies for a living, this silence speaks louder than any confession. Why neither man asked the questions? Both men occupied different sides of the same delusion. The somatic therapist needed to believe he could still read people and inspire transformation. The retired detective needed to believe that transformation could save him from despair. Each was primed to interpret her ideology as proof of what they wanted most. Curiosity would have been fatal. Inquiry would have destroyed the illusion that made life bearable. They did not fail to see the truth by accident. They avoided it by design. One eventually recognized the chaos and fled. The other remains inside it, oblivious to the facts that would unravel his belief. The social architecture of avoidance. Her circle of friends and colleagues reinforced the entire construct. They shared the same pseudo-spiritual lexicon: energy, alignment, vibration, authenticity. Within that community, moral accountability is considered a lower vibration mindset, something belonging to the unawakened. If you questioned the logic, you were stuck in your ego. If you challenged the harm, you were projecting your wounds. It is not a belief system built on evidence. It is a defense mechanism built on group reinforcement. The more harm it caused, the more tightly the group clung to its mythology. Every loss became a lesson. Every broken relationship was the price of growth. Every critic was resisting change. That is the emotional economy of belief: guilt converted into meaning, pain reframed as progress, and isolation rewarded as enlightenment. The lies that hold the system together. She lied to them the same way she lied to her husband, not as calculated deceit, but as psychological necessity. To sustain the identity of the awakened woman, she must deny the harm she has caused. If she admitted the full truth, the entire persona would collapse. The ideology would lose its moral footing, and she would be left with what she ran from in the first place: shame. So the lies continue, packaged as authentic expression. Each half-truth keeps the system alive. And as long as no one demands evidence, the performance can continue indefinitely. When belief becomes a refuge from accountability. The somatic therapist exited the illusion once he saw the speed and chaos. The retired detective remains inside it because it protects his emotional one. Both are participants in the same avoidance structure: the refusal to confront the moral cost of self-deception. That is the danger of ideologies that value emotion over reason. They do not just rewrite personal history. They erase accountability entirely. The louder the conviction, the softer the conscience. The cost of consensus. Surrounding herself with believers allowed her to feel safe from doubt, but safety built on denial is not safety. It is sedation. The emotional economy she created gave everyone a role. The psychologist to intellectualize it, the detective to romanticize it, the friends to validate it, and the critic, the one who saw through it, to be dismissed as negative energy. It is a perfect ecosystem for sustaining delusion. Truth has no currency there, only belief does. The real lesson. When truth becomes a matter of perspective, morality becomes optional. When analysis is replaced by feeling, lies become indistinguishable from enlightenment. The result is not growth. It is theater. The like-minded friends she surrounded herself with were not witnesses to awakening. They were co-authors of denial. And the two men who entered her life were not victims of seduction so much as participants in a shared escape from reality. The tragedy is that the only people who ever looked closely enough to see the damage were the ones she taught everyone else to ignore.